There are no accidents with the song choices at Ohio State. So the message immediately is not to call this a comeback for Ohio State and that they're looking to knock people out. That's the words of LL Cool J. They were loud at 9 a.m. on Thursday for practice number 7 of training camp, which leads us to some snap judgments. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. What a great song. What a great way to start the day.
When I was a child, I used to ride my little big wheel up and down the block singing I'm Going to Knock You Out.
Yeah.
So that was a nice moment for me.
And,
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
And your mother told you to do that?
Yeah, she loved it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did we see out there? Berm.
It's really good to have a strong female presence in the home.
It is.
You know?
It
I
is.
think that's important to discuss. After yesterday's concerns about alpha maleness, I feel like it is important to say that we do still appreciate and need strong maternal figures in the home. And Bill certainly had one. And that's why he's not afraid to knock someone out. I was trying to just get a sense of what they were like. The offensive line, let's start there. Obviously, there were 3 starters, 3 of the top 7 guys not there.
3 yes.
3 of the top 7 with Josh Simmons out today, Carson Hinsman out today, George Fitzpatrick out today. So it did change things quite a bit for the way the line looked. And then at one point, Deontay Armstrong had to come off the field.
So did Zen.
So did Zen Mahalski. So it got pretty
dicey.
Thin. So a lot of the stuff we saw in the inside drill, that kind of stuff, maybe wasn't what it was going to look like. That said, I still think it's pretty much what it's going to look like because this defense is freaking good.
I think it would look better.
It would look better.
Can I say this? Like we watched practices last year where they were messing around on the offensive line and like nothing looked good. Yeah. Wasn't a total disaster out there today. Like there was still some good stuff from the offense.
It's substantially improved.
Despite having, I think by the middle of practice, I counted it. By the middle of practice, they had 11 scholarship offensive linemen out there. And one of them was Donovan Jackson, who was clearly limited today and did not do any teamwork. So they were working with 10 scholarship offensive linemen for basically the entire second half of practice.
Yeah, that's because there's a virus going through the offensive line room.
Yeah, not injuries. Like people are sick.
They're going to be fine, but it is a little bit dicey for that room right now. But watching the defensive line, like Jack Sawyer, watching the Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, like they just are really all over the place. So it's hard to get a real sense. I thought today was Aaron Nolan's best day that I've seen him have. I mean, just to start there, watching the quarterbacks, I thought that Will Howard continues to look more and more the part. I like what I see out of the whole group, honestly. I think like Keenholz struggled a little bit, but
I thought that was his best practice.
Yeah, so did I.
Well, when I was watching him over on this field over here, he was a little up and down, so maybe he got better.
Well, during team stuff, team
stuff, and then the 7-on-7 drive that he led was pretty impressive for me. But
that was, we
were spread out. We all saw different things.
Yeah.
We can have different opinions.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, I just like what I'm seeing out of the really, I asked Ryan Day in his press conference about the secondary and how that affects his evaluations of everyone else. And, I don't know that I really got an answer about, like, does it affect the evaluations? He said no, but, they're iron sharpening iron. And these guys, if they can make plays against this defense, can make plays against anybody. And I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, I think we all wanted to know about where the evaluations stand at multiple positions because I was pretty curious about what a day like today means for the ongoing right guard battle. There's no real clarity on that. And Carson Hinsman has, out of 5 practices that we've got to see, has been out entirely of 2 of them.
Yep. So
that's complicating it. It's complicating the way that Ohio State has to practice. Berm, you mentioned how good that defensive line looks, and it looks fantastic. Like JT Tuimoloau and Tyleik Williams got most of the day off. I don't know if that's because
and Jackson got an ankle issue that happened middle of practice and he missed the back half, but it didn't seem to slow down anyone else.
But I felt like that was a sort of a maintenance opportunity for 2 clear starters, and because Ohio State was stretched a little bit thin on the offensive line, I wasn't able to actually get to that point to ask Ryan Day to clarify, but it did seem that way because neither one seemed to have any actual injuries slowing them down based on how much work they did on the side. But the point is, you could still get to the next wave, and Caden Curry was showing up and being a huge problem for anyone who was trying to block him. You had, I think, Caden McDonald making some plays when Ohio State was blitzing. Arvell Reese was a nightmare for anyone trying to pick him up. And you want Ohio State's going to be good against anybody. I'm wondering just how much stock to put into a day like today when the deck was clearly stacked against the offense.
Yeah, probably not a whole lot. It sounds probably like a little homerish, but it's like The good stuff I actually think means quite a bit given the situation we're in. Like the bad stuff I'm not super concerned about because for the offense, they didn't have their full complement of players out there. But I still think you can feel good about the defense either way. Like I thought, to piggyback off of your defensive line talk, I thought Jason Moore was kind of living in the backfield at times, which was nice to see. Caden Carey was very impressive.
Eric Benson a couple times.
Yeah, he batted a pass down too, I think, at one point too. So the young defensive linemen were getting after it in a way that I thought was pretty noticeable. And I guess they should, right? When the offensive line is a little shorthanded, maybe that would be concerning if they weren't doing that. When I think we looked out there at one point during the team period, and there are 2 walk-ons on the offensive line, right? You just don't see that a whole lot at Ohio State at that particular position. So they were doing what they could. I thought they got good work on offense, regardless. But it did feel more like the defense's day, and which that represents a back and forth kind of for me throughout the practices we've seen, which I think is a good thing.
I do remember, to your point, we were watching the Youngstown State game a year ago, and we're like, where's the pressure? I don't understand what's going on here. That's like not an issue. I'm not saying that Ohio State's backup linemen are Youngstown State caliber, although one did used to play there. But they're winning reps no matter what the situation is. Like those are still, for the most part, scholarship Ohio State players. And even when they're getting into starters, they're making some good plays. But also, you're seeing situations when Josh Simmons has been out there where he's winning in one-on-one opportunities, where Josh Fryer is doing the same. So you do, I think, when the offense succeeds, and I think this is sort of what Ryan Day was talking about with Burns, like that, even if it's 3 times out of 10, that's pretty significant because Ohio State's not going to have to play against the Silver Bullets at any point once the season starts.
Yeah, and the defense, you can tell they're kind of feeding off each other, and they're extremely confident. They're borderline cocky. I mean, I love it.
Borderline?
Jermaine Matthews broke up a pass and did a snow angel in the middle of the field for some reason. Davison Igbinosun and Jeremiah Smith. Like, if we were in a real game somewhere, that probably ends up, one of those guys ends up probably throwing a haymaker at the other.
But Jeremiah doesn't say
Jeremiah
anything.
doesn't talk.
He doesn't have to. One day he's going to snap, though, on someone.
Well, he did it
because everyone who breaks up a pass against him is going to do that.
Yeah, but all Jeremiah did was come back in the next team period and go down the sideline on 3rd down for Will Howard over Davison, caught the pass, dropped the ball, ran back to the huddle, didn't say anything.
Yeah, well,
I like both approaches.
Yeah.
I don't like any kind of like middle ground. I don't want you acting tough if like you're not ready to kind of do that yet. Maybe Jeremiah doesn't want to be out there with that yet. So just go about your business, man. Let them know that you caught it and go back to the huddle. It's just as impactful as IGB getting in your face and talking smack.
That was one of the most wild plays of the day to me. It was 4th and 3 situation in a team period, and the play call was like, I'm just going to say it. This is what the play is now. It's called F it, JJ's down there somewhere. Like, that's what they called, and Jeremiah wins the one-on-one matchup with Davison Igbinosun right after IGB had got all up in his face and used a lot of words that we can't say on this show.
But that's what Will Howard said to me on Tuesday. Like, a good read is a 50-50 ball to Jeremiah Smith because where he's come from, where Will Howard came from, like, that's not a throw he would have made at Kansas State. He would have had to pull it down and try to get the 3 yards on his own. But here, it's F it. JJ's down there somewhere, so we'll just throw it up. And especially when it's a one-on-one situation, that's not, as you guys joked the other day, that's not a 50-50 ball. That's an 80-20 ball.
Yeah.
He almost caught it. Oh, the one that IGB broke up, Jeremiah, tried to catch it, down by his hip with one hand and nearly
He
secured it.
almost did have it. And you have to give, I think, Davison Igbinosun credit for that. He did complete the coverage, complete the swipe at the arm, because otherwise Jeremiah would have caught that ball because he was not quitting on it. Great battle. It's fun to watch that stuff. It was cool to see that because we saw, Bill, way more team stuff than we were anticipating. It felt like on a Big Ten bus tour day, the families were all here to watch. We were in the building. This is probably going to be a light practice. No, the Buckeyes went for almost 3 hours. They were fully padded. They didn't tackle for the entirety of the practice, but that was a very competitive day. They are now 7 practices in. You can understand some fatigue, and then with the illness going on. But Ryan Day did not back off. When I thought maybe they could have midway through, it's like, there's not enough offensive linemen to get through this. They still went for almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
Pretty hard.
I thought, honestly, they might pivot mid-practice and be like, you know what? We got 13 good periods and we have no linemen left. Let's call it a day and we'll walk it through tomorrow and scrimmage on Saturday. But no, they did not do that. They went 19 periods. It was a physical practice without being a tackle to the ground practice, as you said. Pretty freaking humid out here. Like, it was a grueling practice, which I definitely was not expecting, given all of our presence here. But they have to do it, right? They can't afford to change their plan because BTN is here when they have a pretty important scrimmage on Saturday when it sounds like they might try to be determining some starting positions following that. So it was a good day. It wasn't always clean, I don't think. Probably not the cleanest practice of the 5 that we've seen, but I think the most rigorous of the 5 we've seen.
Did we get what we expected to get out of Ryan Day about the quarterback stuff? Which was, and we'll talk about it more on the podcast daily, but
it's probably worth talking about now.
He did pretty much what we all anticipated, which say, Will's starting to separate a little bit, but there's no starter name.
This was the CJ Stroud is separating conversation from 3 years ago now. Mm-hmm. That's what that was today.
Yep.
The words were used multiple times by Ryan Day, command and control. And I don't believe, as I said off the top, there are no accidents when Ryan Day makes a plan or says something publicly.
No, this was the next step in the progression. I thought there was a chance today, as Berm has pointed out a few times today, could have been a day. It probably makes more sense to do it after the scrimmage. You want to give Will the opportunity to kind of confirm your thoughts on how he's performed thus far. I thought this practice was another solid practice for him. He did throw an interception, but he bounced back pretty strong from that. Led a touchdown drive in 7-on-7. And
Denzel Burke is pretty good too.
Denzel Burke had really good coverage. Yeah, it wasn't a bad decision. It was like a 50-50 ball, and Denzel Burke won. So that's okay. I think you live with that. But yeah, it's definitely progressing that way. Command of the offense is a thing Ryan Day said a couple times. I'm going to say the word poise, pocket presence, all those things are jumping out to him. I think it's clear when you watch it, right? Not every throw is perfect, but knowing what to do, getting guys lined up, making the right reads, and making them quickly, Will Howard is definitely doing that better than anyone else.
The way Ohio State is practicing, when they go through individual drills, teach periods, some of those things, Devin Brown is going first through the line, and then every time there's a 7-on-7 full field or a team period opportunity, I believe Will Howard has taken every single one of those reps.
I think that's right.
Or 90% of that.
It's a little hard to figure out what first team was today. I guess you can judge it by the receivers, right? So when Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka are out there, Will Howard is the quarterback.
So did you hear what you wanted to hear about?
Yeah, and I think that was pretty much what we expected, which was we can all see where this is going. I think waiting till after the scrimmage makes sense, and not only just to confirm your own bias, or I don't mean bias in a negative way, but if that's where you're leaning as a coaching staff, to confirm it in a more game-like environment.
They'll be in the shoe too on Saturday.
And it also gives Devin Brown a chance to go out there and say, hey, no, this is not, it's not over. And again, I don't think Devin Brown had a bad day by any stretch.
You'll never believe it. Devin Brown completed another gorgeous deep ball to Jaden Bauer.
Yeah, I mean, he does things really well, and there's other things that he still is not quite as consistent as Will Howard is, and that's fine. That's pretty much what we all expected. But I do think Saturday allows them a chance to go head-to-head and say, win the job. Yeah. Today's your day. If you want it, go get it. And I'm totally into that approach. So I thought Brandon Ennis, a guy who I wanted to watch pretty closely today, made a handful of nice grabs in traffic. He just looks like a guy who's clearly the number 4 receiver on this team. I don't know what happens after that. Maybe they're only going to play 4 receivers this year. I don't know, because
there's a cutoff for sure.
The other guys seem to be fairly significantly behind that group.
Mylan Graham had the touchdown though in practice, right?
Bryson Rogers had another really nice play down the sideline, but he also,
he dropped one.
He dropped one that maybe he shouldn't have. So I don't think that anyone would argue with that, Berm. It's
I think there's probably an argument to have 5, and Bryson Rogers is if there's a drop between 4 and everyone, there's probably as large a gap between 5 and everyone as there is 4 and everyone.
I buy that.
I don't know. I like watching Mylan Graham play football, but it's early. We'll get to that.
We were reminded that he is young though when he lined up in the wrong spot, and Ryan Day said, "No, Mylan, come over here."
Yeah.
Right? So he's gonna work through that.
Jeremiah's broken my brain.
I know.
I'm now starting to talk about
freshmen.
I've always watched them.
Yeah, you've already watched them with with your nose.
We'll see you next year.
You're like, we'll see you next year, and you're like, hey, get off my field, young man. You don't belong.
Before we wrap up, can I add a linebacker thing real quick?
I was going to ask for a defensive MVP, so if it's a linebacker, absolutely. Otherwise, no.
I think I maybe would be okay giving it to Arvell Reese. But I mostly just wanted to say, because we had our linebacker conversation after talking to the guys on Wednesday, and I said, it seems like Gabe Powers is going to be the starting bike next year, I would like to retract that statement.
Okay.
And it's not about Gabe Powers playing poorly. It's about he and Arvell Reese looking kind of like they're neck and neck behind Cody Simon, who was another guy who didn't practice a whole lot today. And Arvell Reese definitely got the most first-team reps at Mike linebacker and looked pretty impressive.
Arvell Reese is a guy that stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you watch him play, you're like, okay, I can see it. And again, as we said on Snap Judgments or the Daily on Wednesday, I don't know.
It was the stonk watch.
It's all running together. The moment that he starts to put it all together, like from a mental standpoint, he is going to skyrocket and become a player that cannot be taken off the field, because physically he is already in that conversation with Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks. And now if he's starting to get the mental side of it as well, like, watch out.
Yeah, I think that's happening in real time. I think, the conversation about having to play, getting to play, however you view it, at Edge last year, I mentioned that in the linebacker notebook on Thursday at ohiostate.rivals.com. It's like he was learning something completely different, and he didn't have an opportunity to be playing Mike linebacker stuff. Now he's had a year of this to learn, and there's still a lot more to get to. I think James Laurinaitis would be quick to tap the brakes on that, but he wouldn't on the mental side. And on the physical side, there's no slowing him down whatsoever. I mentioned on Wednesday in the stock watch, like, Gabe Powers is pushing. I've seen really good things going back to the spring. Every time you watch, Arvell Reese is taking off. He's going to be involved. Bill, you said neck and neck with Gabe Powers. At this point now, have to be surprised if Arvell's not pulling ahead by August 31st.
Yeah, I actually disliked during one period, they were pretty close to us, and the defense kind of had its back to us. So you could hear Arvell like making calls and getting guys lined up. And he is so athletic that even if he didn't have a firm grasp of that, he would probably still find his way to the field. But like, if he's that freaky of an athlete and is really starting to understand scheme and where guys belong and building that confidence to do everything that's required of a Mike linebacker, man, like he was basically just a pass rusher in high school.
Yeah. They put him on the edge and said, go, and
that's
what he did. And then he got here a year ago, did not enroll early, got here last June, spent all that time working with the defensive ends, moving back and forth, running on special teams, got a concussion, missed the whole season. Like, this is really like freshman year for him, and it is clear it's clicking.
I thought Malik Hartford had a pretty good day. Was waiting to see that. We've talked a lot about Jalen McClain, and his name's going to continue to come up. But that's really good for Ohio State. Malik Hartford, I had him for 2 pass breakups. He may have 2 pass breakups. He may have had more throughout the day. It was hard to track everything that was going on in some situations today, but that was encouraging stuff. I think if that's the way this works out, where Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford are 3 and 4, maybe in opposite order there at the depth chart, stuff we talked about at safety is probably not. If there had been a concern about the depth beyond the top 2, we probably don't need to have that conversation anymore.
I mean, we haven't even talked at all about Keenan Nelson Jr. who transferred in from South Carolina, who's played fine. Like, he hasn't stood out in a negative way, but I think we're all watching Malik Hartford and Jaden Bonsu and Jalen McClain to see like who's going to elevate and be in line to be the starter next year. And we do forget that Keenan Nelson Jr. is on this team, I think, at times, but he hasn't made any major mistakes or looked out of place. So
he was good in the they did a tackle period. And he was, there weren't a lot of tackles being made, if I'm being honest, but he made a couple.
Yeah, I mean, again, if we're going back to where we were 3 weeks ago and you're like, okay, these are the question marks of this team: safety depth, linebacker depth, off right guard issues, quarterback, like everything seems to be coming to a point where you're like, actually, this looks pretty good compared to what we thought it was going to look like. When you add the improvement from CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles and Gabe Powers and Arvell Reese, now you're like 5 linebackers deep when last year they were 3.
So great to get back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for a full practice. There was a lot for us to observe, and there's going to be a lot more for us to talk about after hearing from Ryan Day. So we will get to that on the podcast daily for Friday. But these have been Snap Judgments. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.